Well, hello everybody. Happy New Year and all of those things. I was postulating a little bit in the pre-show about whether it's New Year for everybody, because there's Chinese New Year, and I think there are some other Eastern cultures that don't do it on the Gregorian calendar. So there's probably a few places where they're still in 2022 or the year of the whatever it may be. So I guess it's not one size fits all statement is what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way. But this isn't a podcast to do with calendar systems and belief systems. It's to do with electronic music. And as we enter 2023, this is our first show of the year. We had a break over Christmas. Thank you very much to everybody for all your support over the last year, and we see you all. There's a bunch of people in the chat. I've been tinkering. We've got little icons and whatnot. I want to say thanks to Wagyu for moderating as ever, and for Dom for setting up the cross chat posting, which unfortunately is not working today. I'm seeing everything, but it's not going back to YouTube. So if you're missing something, that's okay. But Dom's indisposed, and we wish him all well. I'm sure it'll all be fine when he gets back on the case. But just for today, we're without, but we can manage. And in the meantime, I don't know how everybody else has been doing. I mean, I had a pretty good break. I do seem to be fighting off a cold, which is a bit disappointing. I wanted to start the year, feeling ready to go, but we can talk about that stuff a little bit later on. In the meantime, we've got our guests, but I should just quickly do a plug for my Patreon, because Patreon, as we say, is getting more important now as there's a sort of more of a financial squeeze. The independent support that we get from our patrons is very much valued, and something that you may be interested in yourself. Let me play this. Have I mentioned our Patreon? I believe I may have done once or twice. Anyway, there's two basic tiers. Even at the basic level, you get ad-free versions of all of our uploaded content. If you want to go a little bit higher, it's still only $5.50 a month, cup of coffee perhaps. And what it does is it helps you support Sonicstate, which in these times when advertising is a little bit difficult, the revenue is quite hard to be sure of, just means it retains our independence. And not only that, but you'll get exclusive videos. There's extra videos that we post to most of our Sonic Lab reviews. There's also ad-free versions of everything. We do patch downloads, we do sample set downloads, and other exclusive videos that you're not going to find everywhere else. In fact, we hope to be bringing some of that for our upcoming EMOM broadcast, which is on the 26th of November, in case I haven't plugged that already. But please do consider supporting us. It's much appreciated. Gosh, I really need to update that, don't I? It's so out of date. It's pre-EMOM, and actually, speaking of which, here is one of our guests who is post-EMOM. It's Jamie from Geosynths, who played there. You may have seen that. Jamie played a blinder. In fact, everybody played a blinder. You're well, sir? Had a good Christmas and break and all of those things?
Yeah, it's been good actually. Probably chilled, but then again, I was saying to you earlier on, it was good to actually get in here because I share this office building with different companies that they weren't here, so I could turn it all up and have a bit of a jam and a blast really. So that was good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because normally it's headphones, but I was having a bit of a jam, just trying out a few sort of new things, but then I just found myself back in sound design land as usual. So, but that's not a bad thing. So I was working on this.
OBX 8, right? Yes. Okay, you're doing some patches for that, right?
Yeah, I've done them all. I got it at first and started doing some sounds, but then I had to carry on with some other synths, and it's only recently I've got back onto it. So, I've done 128 and sounding pretty nice.
It's interesting, isn't it? I think there's lots of nooks and crannies in there that are perhaps not so immediately obvious. I mean, the page 2 stuff, but some of the discrete routings are quite something you sort of have to find. There's things on the edges and the corners of things that you don't ordinarily see, first of all, right?
That's spot on. I mean, the edges and the corners is where I kind of live, really, when it comes to sound design, rather than just doing the obvious things of doing vintage sounds, even though I've done some of them because you have to. Yes, it's got jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not jump. How many patches have you got that reference jump but that aren't jump? Not jump. Jump this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Skip. Yeah. Hop.
Yeah, skip. So I've mainly really just been trying to see, what it can do outside of just what you typically sort of think of. A couple of sawtooths detuned and then what, So, very surprising.
Excellent. Well, lovely to have you, Jamie. Of course, Geosynths has got his own YouTube channel. You can find a lot of stuff about what he does, also patch designs and all of those kind of things. He's a cottage industry in his own right. Here is Mr. Gaz Williams as well. Lovely to see you. Happy New Year. Nice to see you. Of course, Gaz is on YouTube. I've updated your lower third. It no longer says gazwilliams.me, you'll be pleased to know, because that
Thank you.
the image on that webpage is so out of date that I don't think you've actually got a full beard and your hair's short, so it must be well out of date.
It's so out of date, yeah. But hello everybody. Happy New Year. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm sort of mulling over this new year now, so it's kind of interesting. As I think many of you know, I've just completed a tour with a Charlotte Church late night pop dungeon, as she's called.
Yeah, looked great. After
7 years. So I'm like a little bit, what next? Because that's been quite a major thing for me. So yeah, I'm kind of be casting the net out, I think. I want playing gigs. That's what floats my boat more than anything else.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, no, well, Gaz, you'll be pleased to know we've now got a date for EMOM 2, and I know you didn't play last time. You were sort of in the middle of. You very graciously said, "Well, I'm gigging all the time. I don't need I don't need the fix. But if we can help supply that fix by getting you to play at this next one, then that would be marvelous. Yeah. I'll put your name down."
I'm actually going to be playing at Froome's Breeze Block Beats, which is an EMOM that happens in the town of Frome on the 21st of January. So really looking forward to that. And I mentioned just before the beginning of the show, in front of me is my live rig, which I pulled all the cables out at about 3 a.m. this morning. And I'm desperately trying not to look at it. So if you see me looking like this during the show,
having an idea.
My live rig. But the reason for that is that I'm sure many people who've sort of dabbled with live modular is just trying to find strategies that are going to get you through the kind of vagaries that get thrust upon you in the live context, you know. So just trying to simplify things a little bit. And shall I give this game? Shall I give this away? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I will, because I think it's interesting, because I think for people who are going, well, what, you know, this modular malarkey is a load of rubbish, isn't it? There are things that come out in that modular kind of workflow that just really is quite astonishing. An example being, I've got the classic Mutable Instruments grids, which is like essentially pre-programmed drum patterns. But if you take the hi-hat out and feed it into a clock divider, and then feed the different outputs of the clock divider into various other beats, then as you modulate the amount of hi-hats playing, or even what the pattern is playing of the hi-hat, obviously everything downstream of that then gets affected. And it just is amazing, because everything's kind of locked into this kind of groove that's coming off the hi-hats, because you know the clock divider dividing down in sort of by 2, by 4, by 8. So it's all just sort of linear divisions. But because each of those clock divisions are coming off wherever those hi-hats happen to pass, you just get the most amazing beats. And I'm like just going, I made this without, you know, sort of, do you know what I mean? As opposed to sort of laboriously programming everything. I made it. It's mine. But it's excellent. Kind of, it sounds. Do you know what I mean by that? Because I mean, people could say like, "Oh, preset beats." It's not really preset beats. It's just like
curated.
You're improvising, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, things like that, they blow my mind.
Nice. Oh, well, that sounds good. I mean, this is all good stuff. I mean, as we know, you know, we've been through the Christmas period. There's not been an awful lot of release, although tomorrow, I should point out, we have got a great big video that Gaz shot with Christoph from Osmos Expressive on the Osmos. That's coming out at 5 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to post it as a premiere tomorrow at 5 p.m. Yeah, and so that's a sit down, grab a cup of tea. That's 49 minutes or 39, a lot. Basically, a lot of minutes, more than half an hour. And then we've got another half an hour, 20 minutes of stuff, just go through patches for the Patreon supporters as well. So do make sure you do that if you're supporting us on Patreon. Keep an eye on that. There's a bunch of stuff coming out.
Something worth mentioning about that extra Patreon content is there is lots of extra patches played by Christoph, who is actually probably
great player, isn't he?
Premium Osmos player in the world right now, before they reach the hands of others, of course. But so he plays all sorts of interesting styles, and I think that'll be interesting for people who kind of not quite sure what it's all about or what musical applications are, practical on it. He shows many, and I think his videos are really good. So that's exciting. Woohoo!
I think it's going to be a pretty major hit, this thing, as long as they can build enough of them to supply demand. I think it's going to be one of those things that really just takes off. I really hope so.
That video, just in case anyone's interested, what we really focus on the video, the main video that's coming out tomorrow is all through the OS and exactly what you can do on board, and why that stuff is there. Yeah. So one thing I'm anticipating about the Osmos is because you don't really have sound design tools on board. You have play design tools.
Performance design, yeah.
So
I think people. So it might suit some people. I mean, it shifts the paradigm to a degree, doesn't it? Each patch, I think people have said, is an instrument in itself, because if it's designed properly, and you'll probably find this, Jamie, if you're going to get involved in this at all, which would be really interesting to see what you think of it. It's you've got a starting point, and then it goes to all sorts of different places, but that's per note, depending on what you play. So it's quite an interesting. What's the word I'm looking for? A proposition. That's what I was looking for.
Is there a kind of steep learning curve with it? I mean, compared to using things like the Rollies, and is it more immediate using it?
I think it's more immediate. It's more obvious to me. I mean, I didn't play it as much as Gaz did, but I turned up at the end of the shoot and just played a bit, and I played it before. It feels much more familiar than the Rolly. The thing about the Rolly is because there's this resistance, the sponginess, which works really well for certain things. I mean, it definitely does things that the Osmos can't, but you need strength on the muscles those muscles, which is very unusual for a keyboard player. Most of the strength is this way rather than this way, and I found when I play the Rolly, I get these kind of cramps in my hands, because I've got quite small hands anyway. But so if you're trying to make chords, and I think the Osmos is less resistive. I think that would be a fair thing. Would you say, Gaz? It feels less.
I mean, featherlight touch can kind of trigger it, but what I would say, one of the big differences is that you've got this display and a really quite a decent amount of control over how you can just completely fine tune it. But that display is clear, and I don't know if you've seen other Expressive E products, but they've got a really beautiful UI. It goes across their plugins and the host for the Touche Lié. They've got a very nice sort of kind of look about it, and that kind of carries through. So the actual display itself is marvelous, and it's full of really funny icons as well. So it's delightful. It's a beautiful thing.
Anyway, well, we should probably get on to some of the topics, because we do have topics, and I can test out some of my new buttons, because I've basically figured out a few things. So I'm going to press this button here, and everything should all happen at once. I'm hoping it does, because otherwise I'll look like a right chump. Hello and welcome to another Sonic Lab. Today I'm looking at a pair of speakers, which is a bit of a tricky thing to review, and I will warn you now that there'll be a lot of talking and not a lot of sound in this, because obviously the only way I could get you to hear these speakers would be by miking them up and then playing them over YouTube, which would just be kind of weird. But anyway, these are the new IK Multimedia iLoud Precision monitors. Right, I mean, watch the video. I put that out between Christmas and New Year, and it's not kind of a thing about them really, but it's this sort of sensation that one has. I mean, we use our ears all the time, and we kind of make do. You become used to the monitors that you use, and you sort of sometimes think, I daren't risk trying a new one because it might upset my equilibrium. It might make it hard for me to judge other things. Once I've heard something a different way, how am I going to then go back to hearing the bass on the monitors that I'm used to, which may be less or better or whatever? And I thought this just was an interesting topic, really, because with the iLoud's precisions, what they've done with these is they've tried to make these into a, expensive studio monitors that might cost you 4, 5, 6, 7 grand a pair. And in my opinion, they've done actually a pretty damn good job. And what I found when I was reviewing it, which was a lot of talking, and I suppose a lot of talking now, is it's just that night and day thing. You turn the speakers on and you go, blimey, I haven't heard any of that stuff before on this material that I thought I knew really well. This is really weird. I just wondered what you kind of thought. Have you found your ideal ones? Are you looking? Would you risk a change of monitors? What would it have to? What would those monitors have to give you that would make you consider going, you know what, I'm going to jump? I'll come to you first, Jamie, because sound design is your thing, right? So the nuance is quite important. So you need to hear those details, presumably, and particularly when you're presumably normalizing those patches across a bank, so they all have a sort of similar level and a similar energy and whatever it is that they need to have. There's a mastering process which is involved in that as well, right?
Yeah. There's quite a lot of that. I think really for me, there's two sorts of monitors, aren't there, really? There's ones that are kind of incredibly accurate, but they don't particularly sound very pleasing, especially listening to them over a long period of time. The last expensive ones I bought were Tannoy Ellipse 8s, which were like these kind of oval ones with this super tweeted dome on the top of it. This was like sort of mid-2000s I got them. And they were about sort of £900 each. Something like that, maybe actually more thinking about it. But they were, sort of dual concentric, had a tweeter in the middle and this super tweeter, and very, very accurate, especially the stereo imaging. You knew exactly where everything was, but just not very pleasing. But you can get others which are quite hyped at the top end and hyped at the low end. I've just sitting in here, I've just got like some HS7s. I've got some HS8s, but they boom too much. And they're just like hi-fi speakers, really. And they get you into the groove a little bit. They are overhyped. It's like smiley face EQ, isn't it, really? But I tend to, when it comes to sound design, it's very much like trying to lift the fog of as much as you can. So you can really listen into what that frequency is doing, and then you're able to see the shapes in your mind's eye. And I tend to use headphones now. I've got these Audio-Technica ATX50s, and they can sit on my head all day long, and I don't get tired of them. They do have a bit of a pleasing tone to them, but that's how I tend to sort of work them, really. Though these ones, they do look amazing. I don't know how much I'd mess them up, though. I'd be forever fiddling with the microphones, try to balance everything, and then not knowing if what I'm hearing is actually correct or just I'm liking it because it's different. So I don't know.
That's interesting. Well, as a reveal here, I found the auto room correction, which is the thing that one of the features the DSP does, is you can flatten out any lumps you've got in your speaker, but I didn't like that. I found it much more pleasing, fully natural. I found the ARC sounded a bit artificial. But having said that, I spoke to the people at IK, and they said, well, what you need to do is you set it up and then you spend 20 or 30 minutes listening to them like that, rather than just kind of, oh, I don't like it, switch it off. You then listen to them, so your ears become attuned to it, because then you get more accuracy. But I found personally, and I didn't do that, I suppose, I preferred the open sound, but very impressive. And the thing the DSP does is time align all those frequencies. So as you say, the stereo imaging is bonkers. It's literally, you can tell the difference between that. And I've never heard that on, or you don't hear that on many speakers that, cost a normal. Anyway, Gaz, I know you're into speakers. You've got a decent pair of General X and other stuff as well. You got the little iLoud MTMs, haven't you? The IKs?
Yeah, and I've got them kind of coming across this way. I used to have them both coming across this way, so I could go between both sets. But actually, it's one of those things I can rotate and have them come in. And it's bizarre. Same room, same listening position, except rotated, different pair of speakers. 1,000,000% different. It's bizarre.
Right.
So this whole kind of monitor thing is a conundrum. I've been using these Genelecs for over 20 years now, and I am touching on what you said at the intro on this piece about doing stuff not using those is slightly worrying. I've worked on over 300 commercial releases or more with these monitors over the years. And by and large, when I hear the work that I've done, and that's mostly mastering and mixing really with these monitors, I'm always generally quite pleased. So
Right.
they've given me a confidence and sort of, I can get the job done because I can just not question it too much. I can put my faith into that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So to replace them, I did for a short while have a pair of Munro eggs, which was sat on the top of these, the big ones, and then they need a separate power amp. They're kind of egg-shaped monitors. And when you would go between the two monitors, toggling on the playback, you could hear the boxiness of the Genelecs. I mean, Genelec have moved away from the box design now to something a little bit more egg-like in the 80 range. And those would probably be the 8040s, I think, would probably be the one that I would go to next, just because there is that sort of family thing with Genelec. Now, Genelec are not vibey speakers. They are kind of bright and revealing and take no prisoners. The MTMs, on the other hand, are really different. These ones have that microphone as well, and I've got them. They are currently set up with the microphone, but you can, on the back, you can switch it. There's 3 modes of the MTMs. You can have them either play in the room, the ARC, or what's it called? Sorry, the
ARC, the room correction. Yeah.
ARC, and you can also have them in like what's called a desktop mode, which is sort of like a EQ'd for the typical bounce that speakers positioned on a desktop would do. Or then there's the normal mode, and then there's various kind of tone controls that you can do to tailor that as well. So they're pretty tailorable. But the notable thing is the top end is so different. So when you switch from the Genelecs into the IKs, it feels like the top end completely collapses. And I mean, this might be for a bunch of reasons. And my initial thing is, but then I stick in the IKs for a while. So this would back up what they were saying. And then I start getting attuned into it, and the bass is tighter and more defined than the bigger speakers, than the Genelecs. And then when I switch back to the Genelecs after being in those for a bit, then my head's gone.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I suppose that's
I try not to do too much of that switching, and I think ultimately that sort of stuff is a distraction. If I've got a job to do, I'll keep the MTMs turned off. I'll work on the Genelecs, and I'll do the job, and I won't,
because you question it.
I won't go that and undermine, because I'll just get confused and then start crying.
I wonder, I mean, the thing that I wonder about is as well, because modern DSP technologies now, I mean, one thing about DSP, I know Ty spoke about this quite a long time when he was looking for studio monitors, and he found latency was introduced with the DSP in some of the speakers that he tried. I have to say, in the iLab Precisions, there is none. It's absolutely fine. But what DSP can do that is, I would imagine, is almost impossible to do in traditional analog making a speaker in a box with an amp design, is getting that phase alignment, that time alignment, all of and the frequency response, because you can just you can mess with it to kind of make the performance outperform what you would expect in a box of that size. So you end up hearing something that you would just not hear that in a set of speakers. If they were just regular analog speakers and an amp, it's less likely that you're going to have it tuned properly to get the same phase alignment. That's the tweeter and the woofer. The frequencies arriving all at the same time. The mush that you get in the crossover, because the amp that drives the bass driver and the amp that drives follows the tweeter. There's this sort of area where the frequencies cross over, because you don't get that, you have this. And that leads to sort of all sorts of smeary stuff. And you don't get that with speakers that use DSP to kind of fix all of that stuff. And I suppose that's the benefit. I mean, this is not just an IK thing. I think it's in general. You know, that's what you can do with speakers with DSP, and that's really impressive, I think.
Yeah, I used the KRK Ergo for years and years and years until it became essentially, sadly, obsolete because of its Firewire drivers, which you needed to do for running the kind of the room software stuff. But that was a brilliant unit. I loved that, and I used that with the Genel X for many, many years. And that,
Do you use the sub at all, Kaz?
I've got another set of monitors at the other end of the studio, PreSonus Eris ones, and I've got a sub with them. But that's for vibe and not for sort of particularly critical listening. I have had a sub.
That's where I get everything wrong, is the low end kick drums and things like that. And of course, with what you do, with playing bass, I mean, that's something that you've got to be really focused on. And that was quite surprising, you know, from watching your review, Nick, about how sort of low these speakers go for, like 6.5-inch woofers. Was it something like 37 to 37 hertz to 30k flat, pretty much. They do sound like they've got a sub with them. You listen to them and just go, where's the sub? And it's really, like you say, Gaz, with the MTMs, which are much smaller, it's tight and focused and clear. And that's the thing that's, you know, which is unheard of. I don't usually get to hear that kind of stuff, you know. So, it's interesting. Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to have a listen to them, because the problems I have, you know, not that I do a whole lot of music these days, but, you know, the room's not great. The treatment I've got isn't great. And, you know, I'll be sitting in the middle. It sounds good, but if I just move a little bit to the left, the bass disappears or something like that. So, I don't know. I think these at low end, I'm usually all right with the rest of it. But low end it's a guess half the time.
That's what you get when you start paying more. And because they assume that if you're paying more for monitors, your room is going to be a little bit more, you're not going to be mixing in a bathroom, you know, or whatever, you know, you're going to have something which has an appropriate level of acoustic treatment, which, you know, you're not necessarily going to have. Anyway, I don't want to dwell on it too much. We've actually got there's more stuff we've got to mention, but I just thought it was an interesting chat, because I think might relate to a little bit further on to what we're going to be talking about in terms of you know, where things are going. So anyway, let's hear from our friends over at iZotope.
iZotope's OZone 10 is the future of mastering. The new version includes the Master Assistant, which matches your master.
Hello and welcome to another. Oh, bugger! Sorry about that. That's terrible. Let's try that again. I do beg your pardon. That was.
iZotope's OZone 10 is the future of mastering. The new version includes the Master Assistant, which matches your master to any reference file. The advanced version includes a stabilizer module, adding mixed clarity with an intelligent and adaptive mastering EQ, and an impact module, which enhances the rhythm by controlling microdynamics. Don't forget, you can use the code SONIC10, that's SONIC10, at iZotope.com/SonicTalk to save an additional 10% off any one-off software purchase. That's SONIC10 at iZotope.com/SonicTalk.
I knew I'd messed something up, and I just did. But anyway, we're nearly there. What I'm trying to do is, am I muted?
No. I just wanted to jump in just really quickly about OZone 10, if I may, because I've done my first. I've done my first session.
You've been using it. Oh, nice.
Yeah, and with working with Billy Salisbury, undercover hippie, who's a really entertaining artist. But when I work with him, he's just really into the technical side of things. So what that enabled us to do is go really into like the shaper and have a good play with that and see if it, you know, what it actually does. Because these things, you know, you look at the kind of at the advertising sort of mumbo jumbo a little bit, and it all sounds really interesting. But what does it actually do? One of the things that's kind of cool now. There's a Delta logo, and this is on numerous modules, and that lets you listen to what it does with muting everything else. And then that's really interesting, because when you listen to this thing that's meant to be just sort of just bringing the details out front. If you just listen to that on its own, it's a mad effect. It's really interesting. But what it does is I felt a bit vindicated. Do you remember years ago I was talking about how I love to use dynamic EQs on masters, just so there's always a sense of the frequencies are just always shifting and unmasking and moving all the time. But putting them in almost randomly, but not being too fussy about where they go, but just to kind of have this kind of spectral animation going on. Well, that seems like what the Shaper is doing, and it's this kind of weird thing that when you turn it on and when you turn it off, it's when you turn it on, the music just does become, it affects you. You are more emotionally drawn into it. It's a peculiar thing, but and the analogy I think is that gorgeous feeling when you're opening up a filter or when you're playing a wah-wah, that frequencies that are shifting just draw us in. We just get really. It does something to us, doesn't it? We are like, filter movements just they pull you in.
I wonder. That's interesting. I wonder if it's because subconsciously it's the what our mouths do. Effectively, it's like singing that, so we have an emotional connection to it because it's like singing, the way that we express. Anyway, that's probably a bit, but interesting. Nice. Let's see what else we got. I have. We got to do this. I mean, this is kind of resolutions and trends. I'm going to see if this button works because it didn't last time. It might do this time. So stand by. Anything could happen. Okay, so hello. We're here at Tokyo. We're at Harajuku. Yeah, there we go. It didn't work. So I'll have to do this. I know what to do. I'm going to do this one. This is what I need to do. I press this button. And so, this is an Infonet article, but it wasn't really this. And this is they're basically kind of coming up with the idea. Okay, so what is it that... God damn it. Press the button. Yes, that's what I want to do. Resolutions and trends. Yeah, obviously still got a bit too much work. So obviously we've had a year. There are things afoot. There's shifts and changes globally. There's, all sorts of factors that are kind of coming into play, including shortages and, lack of shortages, design now. So what Infonet did, they've basically kind of, I think this is it's almost like a marketing thing, really. It was just the first thing I could find that just illustrated what people might think. According to them, they think the global streaming music market is expected to grow rapidly. It reached $29 billion last year and is going to grow by another 15%. So they say there's going to be AI in production, VR concerts, a proliferation of home studios. I mean, that's what made me think this is absolute nonsense. But, it's more illustrative. And then automation and music promotion. What I'm interested in is there's two aspects to this. What do you think the trends are going to be for the coming year? And and have you made any sort of resolutions that might reflect that, or, made any New Year's resolutions creatively that you want to pursue? Jamie. I know it's a pretty massive question. I realise that, but I thought it was, we should tackle it. We're up to it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the things are going to be, everyone's been talking about AI and how that sort of influences, and Gaz earlier on talking about OZone, and I've sort of used their assistant. And it's come up with some very interesting sort of results, probably better than I could just come up with from scratch. So I think AI is going to have its uses. Also scares me a little, that it could not necessarily just take your sort of music, but end of the day, I suppose fundamentally what I do is patterns, so it could put me out of a job. So there's that. I think there's going to be more though with AI, especially now that a lot of it's opening up like GPU as well as your CPU for more sort of plugins. And better sort of plugins, more accuracy, I suppose, over time. Though, I don't know. I just hope it doesn't turn in. There was an episode on Black Mirror, wasn't there, with Miley Cyrus, where she was like in a coma and they plugged into her and they were pulling off her ideas from and making new tracks and everything. So I hope it doesn't go down that sort of route.
Well, that's not AI, is it? That's just like brain harvesting, which is probably a bit more sinister in many ways. I don't know. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
I mean, I think personally, though, stuff I want to do more is probably just out more performing and just writing some more music, really. Sound design is the day job. That's 90% of what I do in here. But just to get back into it, because that's why I got into all this in the first place, 1988. So it was to do music. So, a lot more of that, I think. Though at my age, I've no idea what sort of music to do.
Well, yeah, I understand. Well, follow your nose, I think. I think it's interesting. I think, again, AI, I think what we perceive as is likely, the hype around AI is, there's going to be AI music and AI everything, and we're just going to consume it, and we're going to be force-fed it. I think actually more likely AI is going to be creeping in at the edges, at the periphery of things. It's like, oh yeah, that's really useful. AI can do this, and it will start to be useful as a tool rather than a complete replacement for the creative mind, because that's just not going to happen unless, it's entirely possible that a musical trend develops where it is an AI doing pop, and that's just what the kids are listening to, for instance. But I can't see it lasting long. I think at the moment, because there's a lot of mistrust of the man or the administration all over the world, I just don't think AI is going to get in on that level. I think it will be very useful in other areas myself. And I guess, what about you? What do you think trend wise and what you'd like to actually see?
Well, just to carry on with that AI thing, sort of, and what you were saying there is kind of interesting about it. Like, there's certain novelties that kind of happen, but what are the kind of real things that will actually make a difference? I've always wanted like an AI engineer, when I've had the luxury when I'm producing to have an engineer working with me and they're so great. I wish I'd have done more than that. I typically on my production would be the engineer and the producer, but when you have the engineer and an engineer that you can just trust and you can go, okay, get a drum sound up, they get the drum sound up, you can be focused on other aspects of their production. So having like an AI engineer who, like, say you've recorded a load of drums, you just go, get me a drum mix up. Okay. And then the engineer sort of plays it, go, what do you think? Say, yes, give me another one. Bring, they give you another drum mix. Or where that would be going to, that's on a multi-mic drum kit, with say, 12 mics on the kit, with all of the kind of phase issues and all the various things like that. The AI could sort of like timeline and do all of that kind of sort of super time consuming stuff. And just, that kind of stuff is quite interesting to me, that things that kind of slow things down, if you can speed things up, then that'd be pretty cool. I'm sure a lot of people say, oh yeah, but I love doing all that, setting up all the drum tracks, and say, yeah, but it does
people don't want to pay for it.
No, that's the other thing.
I think that's a really valid point. I mean, and in many ways, I think a lot of, when you're doing a lot of production, there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes that, it's not just getting the mix up. It's like, that's a bit too out of time, but everything else is great. Can we just fix that bit? That's a bit too out of tune. Can we fix that bit? We have, the artist isn't there. I mean, to varying degrees, obviously you can squash the life out of things, but quite often you might just want to nudge things around, and that's time consuming. If you can AI that's going to be useful.
Yeah, and sort of tuning vocals, doing it like auto-tune, but with that Melodyne, a combination of the two. I mean, you sort of can do this with Vari Audio in Cubase.
It still takes time, doesn't it? Yeah.
But it still takes time. But I think you still have to go through it and make assessments about that. I used to do a job for a choir company where we would create essentially perfect guide vocals for the different choir members to sing. So that it involved an awful lot of pitching. And so I wondered about whether AI could kind of do some of that sort of stuff, making, like it can kind of recognize that it slurs. So as that slur is going up, it's not stair-stepping it, but it's still maintaining the slur.
The swoop, yeah.
But the swoop, but it sort of is cleverly just centering, when, a singer will often overshoot and then stabilize. But some of that overshoot is quite nice, so being able to kind of like make qualitative assessments of that sort of stuff in AI, again, super useful. And then you come in and listen to it and just hone in on the few spots where,
it's like if you could just kind of go, yeah, that's great. Okay, bar that beat there, beat 2, less.
Yeah.
Or more, tighter, looser. Those are the sort of things that voice commands could easily assist with, and it might be quick enough. And then you just approve the final. I don't know. I mean, I think that this is very specific sort of production assistance. I think the creativity of it. I think personally, what's going to probably happen in the next year as well is, as there's a lot of squeeze on financially all over the place. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on workflow and getting more out of what you've already got, and nifty ways to use these things in combinations that you hadn't thought of. And workflow is a very, for many people who don't produce music all the time, working on workflow is as satisfying in many ways, because you're coming up with these kind of really cool ways to do things. Okay, maybe no one will ever see that. I mean, it's part of what I do here, and I know you do this to a certain degree, Gaz, as well, in your spare time. It's like a thing. It's nice to be able to go, oh yeah, if I set this up this way, it's very pleasing to me, and it will do all these clever things. Okay, I might not use it, but I think a lot of people enjoy that process that are involved in, that are the sort of people that buy the software, buy the music, they're not in the charts, they're just hobbyists, but that is a massive amount of people. And I think so there's going to be a lot of that going on myself.
It's interesting you say that. I mean, because a lot of things to do with workflow, especially if you don't do it a lot, is that it doesn't become second nature. So it's slow. Everything is slowed down. Now, what I was thinking when Gaz was saying before, and talking about having that sort of assistant, is a bit like in PowerPoint, where you have these effects that you just apply to an image and it'll do all these things, like a macro of lots of different movements. And that's where AI, I think, could probably help. I'm thinking in terms of, sound design, modulation routines that are, rather than me sitting each time doing the same ones from scratch every time, that I could have this library or a suggestion of modulation routines. So something like the Moog One, you can save all your modulation routines and then load them back up as sort of presets, if you like. So I think that'd be cool. That's where it could help out. And I wonder if performing live as well, if AI could be used for things like mixing live.
I mean, I don't see why not. I mean, there are algorithms that aren't AI. They're just kind of a set of rule-based things. There's an auto mix in the X32, which is useful for mics. So if a mic is quiet at a certain time, it goes down, so you don't get feedback if you're doing a roundtable discussion. There's Dugan auto mix or Dugan auto mix, which has been around for many years, and it's a sort of I think that's a patented system for mixing multiple microphones. I don't know. I mean, and in many ways, a lot of mixing when we transitioned from automated to non-automated systems, non-automated to automated mixing systems, you would do that by using side chains and gate keys and things that would, when the bass drum hits, this happens. When the bass hits, this happens. And the same is happening with dynamic EQ. So we're sort of doing that, that's part of music technology, or the music production now already. It's just, it sort of has to be built in this massive kind of amorphous cloud of everybody does it differently, which I think is the key. You don't want everybody doing it the same, because then you'll end up back in the 92 with everybody mixing on Pro Tools doing soft metal, and it sounds awful, because it's just all the same, with Apogee Rosetta converters, and that's that. I don't know.
It's an interesting idea, though, or some side of auto mixing, in that when you're working on something and you're fixated, say, on the vocals, and you kind of and you lose the perspective that actually the kick drum is like too quiet or something else, you just, if there was something in the background that was just always kind of at least putting everything into the normal place for you. There's some quite interesting things about that. Just again, that thing of when you're working with somebody else, then they've got perspective when you've lost your own perspective. That is a thing, isn't it? I reckon that might be a thing going forward. So how to
maybe that's what they'll have to do. They'll have to go and model a load of sound engineers. So you just pull it like drummer in Logic. You pull up an engineer and it'll apply all these great, things that he has in his pocket into your tracks.
Hold on. Now we're getting very close to the Microsoft paperclip here, which is, hey, have you thought about, isn't that essentially, I mean, careful what you wish for. Because, I mean, I know many people who, were prepared to throw entire computers out of Windows because of that thing, because it's just so patronizing and irritating, too jolly. We need maybe AI that's a little more, it's got a bit more kind of solemn and maudlin AI that just kind of, I don't know. I mean, we're all getting it all the time, and it's essentially, as humans, we modify, in a conversation, we are having a conversation, and if we don't know each other very well, we'd be continually modifying our behavior, either for effect, to annoy somebody or to provoke them or to not provoke them, so that is a continual sense of, that's a modification of perspective and change. And I suppose AI could be applied to similar principles in something. I don't know. That's a bit wishy-washy, I'm afraid.
Moving away from AI, but following on from what you're talking about with trends and stuff, though, Nick, I wonder, one of the things for me which has been transformative is once I started playing with my modular with somebody else, in my case with Steve Davis, once I started doing that, taking that very solitary thing and meaningfully interacting with other people, whether we'll see trends that will facilitate more kind of like doing stuff together, but in the electronics sphere, like many people, I've come up with bands. I'm a band guy, really. So I love to play with another person, but, me and Robin Vincent have made a video about Elk, that'll be on my channel soon, and Robin's channel, that facilitates jamming, but actually getting together and playing music together, like Jamie was saying, when you've got limitations with sound, you don't want to disturb people, so getting together for jams but on headphones poses a little bit of a communication problem if you're both in headphones. What I've got in my little jamming set at the other end of the room there is I've got a little foot switch that goes to a talk back. So if you're in headphones, you can do the talk. But I wonder whether things like that could be more. I think that's a really valid point. I mean, I think because lots of people don't know what it feels like to play with other people, and that might be it can be a revelation. It can be like a wow. This is so much more. Or it can also be terribly off-putting if the other person doesn't. You don't fit together creatively or whatever. So maybe that could be another trend. Because that's free, isn't it? Essentially, you don't have to buy. You have to pay for that. You could just collaborate, and that's a big thing. Before we go, we do have another word from our friends over at Baby Audio, which I really do have to.
Baby Audio make creative effects plugins designed to add colour and depth.
They've done it again. Interesting. Let's play that again, shall we? I beg your pardon.
Baby Audio make creative effects plugins designed to add colour and depth to your mixes. They won Plugin of the Year 2021 in Future Music and Computer Music magazine, and they were nominated for the SOS Awards 2 years in a row. Crystalline is an algorithmic reverb plugin inspired by classic 20th century studio reverbs, but offering higher fidelity thanks to 21st century computing power. A reverb plugin with a variety of creative features, such as the ability to tempo sync pre-delay and reverb decay times. You can get 15% off when checking out with the code ST15.
Thanks again, Dom, for that. I will probably try and reverse back to a previous version of this document because I've obviously broken a lot of things that I hadn't any chance to test before going live with it. But again, that's all part of life's rich tapestry and the the frisson you get from live streaming, but hopefully it won't lose us our very welcome and loyal sponsors. I don't know what else there is to say. I just think this is a fascinating conversation because let's take it on to the next stage of this, which is New Year's resolutions. I went out on New Year's Eve. I had a lovely evening, and people saying, "Oh, have you got New Year's resolutions?" And everyone's going, "No, I'm not bothering with them anymore. They're too much of a commitment, and everything's so up in the air. I don't want to kind of make my life any more difficult, etc., etc. Whatever, for whatever reason." And I wonder whether that applies to you guys. I mean, have you made any New Year's resolutions? I mean, I'm thinking maybe in the creative field, it may be that you want to find all your odd socks, but that's perhaps not as interesting as something that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said earlier on, it was really about sort of getting out more, and that's a bit of a hunger I've seen from many people, really. And it was probably a lot to do with when we weren't allowed out. They were all sort of around, let's get out there and let's get together with other fellow synthesizer humans. And that's what's kind of attracted me to this EMOM thing, straight away, was that it's not so much about my bit and what I'm doing, it's listening to what other people are doing and how it could progress in the future. It reminds me so much of the early days of things like, remember Disco Mix Club, when you had the DJs doing battles, and it was very sort of low key at first, and then that grew into something sort of, a lot more. And I don't know, it feels like a bit of a kind of second wind, really, for electronic music. It's very grassroots at the minute, but that's what's kind of exciting me. And then with what Gaz was saying about, people getting together and doing things, not just with sort of modular, but just sort of playing together. I think that's
okay. And you have to be honest here as well. It's just a teensy little bit about tinkering with the system that allows you to enable this to happen as well. You're probably like me, is that you actually. I mean, I love making all of this stuff work. We've got one of the things that we found, we've got a new PTZ camera for our for the next EMOM, which means we'll have two, which means it'll make a big difference. That moving shot makes a huge difference, and just integrating things like that. Those are the sort of things that I really enjoy about that, as well as, I mean, I think that there's John Birch played a set, and he's basically been pretty kind of housebound for a long time, just from anxiety and panic attacks and stuff, and it was a really big deal for him to do it. And he came and he played, and not only was it lovely that he did it, but it was actually really good. And he got such a buzz off it, and almost that's enough. If you can make that much of a difference to one person by putting on one of these events, then that's almost enough for me. But obviously I'm looking for fame, riches, and Rolls Royces as well as being able to tinker with my video equipment and automate it to the nth degree. I know, Gaz. Sorry, that was a little bit flippant of me, but it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, have you made any resolutions yourself?
No, I never do, because I know I'll never keep them. But I completely concur with you, though, about the joy of getting the setup right. I mean, so I'm playing on the 21st, as I mentioned at the top of the show, in Frome. So, that's just an excuse just to redo my live thing, and spend copious hours just tweaking.
How long's your set? How long do you play it?
20 minutes. That's about 20 minutes. But I just, what I'm talking about now is I've got like it's a Damaru case. 104 HP, 2 rows and a 1 euro, so Eurorack case, and many more modules, and I've got there's just billions of different iterations that you could kind of set it up. But anyway, what I'm trying to think about, though, is I played live for the first time on my own with modular last year as part of the We All Play Synths event that happens every 3 months in Bristol, in Lost Horizon. That's an EMOM. That's really good event. I was meant to play for 15 minutes. By about 10 minutes, I'd sort of kind of done everything.
Said everything you wanted to say. Yeah.
But so I've been listening to quite a bit of techno lately, and listening to acts like Daniel Avery, who's just, what he does is quite sort of almost kind of classic, simple techno, but the length of time he'll stay on a particular thing before moving on. You know, I'm just so maximalist. I'm always trying to just get there straight away, and just having a little bit more, just being a bit more relaxed about it. Underworld, another great example. You know, the Underworld really take their time with what they're doing. So maybe that as a, not a resolution, but maybe a thing this year is just to try and just take my time and just like let things just sit and simmer for a bit, you know, and don't, you know, something that I suffer from is always I want to always be like, you know, pizzow, yeah, come on, you know, excitement, it's sort of, this, you know, impressive. But music, you don't want to listen to impressive things musically, do you? That's not...
Well, sometimes you do. I'll tell you someone you should listen to. I don't know, you were there that night. It was when we left the night we left Superbooth the last time, and there was some techno playing at the Bungalow Dorf which is in the woods out there.
Oh yeah.
And it was Mark Verbose, and he is a master. Absolute master at that, you know, because he just plays with the Verbose system, and it's like a hi-hat, a snare, maybe one or two other things, and he just and a kick drum, and it might not even have that much tradition, you know, so there might be two or three percussive elements and then something, and his builds and his, you know, it really opened my eyes, because he's obviously lives in Berlin, he's used to playing in that environment, in sort of that techno club environment. Normally I would think, oh, that's not for me, it's just too repetitive and not enough interest, but he's really good at that. Might be worth listening to a bit of his stuff as well. I don't know if he does if he records, but if anyone's heard of his sets, it really happens in the moment. It's very, very good, and that might be an inspiration as well. But I think that's a good. I'm the same. I mean, you know, all my life I've worked in pop music, and it's like any more than 8 bars and something's got to happen, man, otherwise you're done for. 4 these days probably, you know, or maybe even only 2, you know, so it's an interesting one.
I've got much more drums on modular than I thought I would, you see. I really love it, and that's taken me down that more techno route, and I did not expect to be going there.
Interesting. Well, I think, I mean, again, this isn't, you know, we're not like a panel of futurists or anything. It's just, I just think there's an interesting kind of direction that I think will go. And I think there's a certain level of, you know, there's trends, you know, there are trends which technology will take you in a direction of. And we were talking about this, I think at Synthfest, weren't we, Gaz? The fact that, you know, there's a really technology enables certain kinds of music. Certain artists will adopt, you know, the Mitsubishi 32-track digital, for instance. They'd be the first one to make the album. Everybody goes, oh, crikey, we need that in our lives. That means we can do all of this stuff. And it's the, you know, the sampler. There are trends and there are things in music technology which greatly affect the output of music. But then there are also underlying trends which I think are more reactive to what's going on in society, which is kind of what we're talking about a little bit as well. And I think collaboration, I think you're right, Jamie, as well. I think collaboration is probably going to be something that I'm already really looking forward to the next EMOM, and I'm hoping that, you know, we'll be able to pull it off. I mean, the thing that worries me most is, will it be as good as the first one in terms of turnout? We'll be able to get more people to come and make it more. Because one thing I did find, and it's really, I would like to have more of a vibe in the room, because everybody goes and sits down and listens and watches. And that's why I didn't use camera shots so much, because it was basically an entire room full of people that looked like me, and I thought I'd quite like a bit more sort of some more youth and dancing and kind of reaction, you know, and people having a good time. And it's and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but when you have recorded it, you go, crikey, that's what this room is, and people were going, why isn't anybody dancing? And you can kind of understand it to a degree. It'd be nice to maybe meld the two and make it an event that can people who appreciate the technology and that. And can, you know, sit and nod and enjoy it that way, but also people who just want to have a good time and can appreciate just the feel of the music. That would be nice to somehow marry those things together. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I'm going to give it a go. I know you were. I didn't see you dancing, but I was busy, so you know, maybe
at various points. Yeah.
Maybe we should just get a podium and a cage and some dry ice and some, like, a spotlight
Go
or
on,
something,
then.
and you can. All right,
I'll do that.
No, I mean, it's interesting though, because a lot of the time with the performance, it tends to be somebody stuck behind a bit of gear, and you see the top of their heads. And I've thought about maybe approaching the local sort of college and maybe sort of performance artists, to have them along, because some EMOMers are actually doing performances as well at the same time, them acting or using visuals and so on. And I think maybe there's something on that. But yeah, it'd be great if, someone's doing some tracks and it's pounding, it's over 120 BPM, that everyone gets up and starts dancing. But I don't know. Maybe it's because it's the limited and 15 minutes and then it's over, and then there's a bit of a gap. Maybe.
Well, I think so, but I think to a degree there's probably a tipping point in terms of numbers who attend. I mean, we had, I don't know how many in the room, maybe 80 or something like that. If we had 120, then there'd be a different atmosphere, because people wouldn't have been able to sit. They wouldn't have been able to sit down. They would have been moving around a lot more. There would have been more conversation, more noise, which would probably meant the music turned up a little bit more to get over that. So it would have changed the atmosphere. I suppose that's what I'm looking for to a degree. I mean, I've got a background in doing live sound gigs. I did that for years and years and years, and I know there's a point at which it kind of flips, doesn't it? The audience suddenly become engaged, and I think that you might be right, Jamie, that it's to do with the length of performance as well. 15 minutes, people are still not sure, making their mind up whether it's cool or whatever. They need a bit more of that. It's the warm-up period, so maybe that's I don't know, but we make it any longer and you've got less act, and it's more of a commitment for people to play, and it's a bit more terrifying, I'd imagine, which is the idea, is to make it available, isn't it, and whatnot.
Yeah. I think as well, because they are kind of sold as an open mic, and generally open mics are pretty much the majority of the people in the room are the acts. I mean, the small fry were the ones that I do, and that's how it tends to be. You go to any sort of Tuesday night open mic anywhere, and that's what it'll be. It'll be mainly the acts.
It's a community thing,
yeah.
So, yeah.
It is, and I think maybe that's the thing that'll change over time. I think as well, people have got to know that it's there. That dotted around in all areas, there's the EMOMs or similar ones. I just think it's still, even though it's been a good sort of year, really, I suppose, it's still early days, I think. And yeah. But I think maybe for you, it would be each one you have a headliner or two.
Maybe so.
Part of it that is going to do a specific type of thing that's known.
Well, I think that's what we were going to try and do this. I mean, I built all the posters I did just had live electronic music. That was the biggest thing about it, because I thought that would probably be the most descriptive way of putting it, which is exactly what it was. Anyway, sorry, Gaz.
With the EMOM thing, that some music is just easier to talk over than other music. Like if it was someone playing acoustic guitar and singing, then to talk over that would be kind of wrong. You'd want disrespectful. But some electronic music, it's just not. You can't really listen. You can listen to it, but if you're amongst a load of people, it's actually all right to talk, and it still be really good going on and talking over it. And I just wonder how well, or what maybe you and Jamie might think about that. Should everyone be like super hushed? Now, funnily enough, at the EMOM, when George Hearn played, a hush fell across the room, and I think that's what made me think about this. Because I don't know.
Well, he just played an instrument live, which was possibly the only one who hadn't. There was nothing backing him up, was there? It was just a live performance, like synth jam, which is. And
it sort of felt kind of like right then to be a bit more hushed, but it's also, if people get upset if people are talking when they're doing their electronic music thing, or whether that should just be accepted and I just don't know what the protocol is.
I wasn't upset that I wasn't upset about it. I just think it would be nice if there's just, I mean, if it was 120 people all talking, then you turn the music up and you force them back a little bit, and then you create a vibe to a degree by that. Or when the drums come in, they'll probably all sort of react in a different way. Anyway, we could go on about this for ages. I think it's fascinating, but yes, may the movement continue. And Jamie, when's yours again? Would you like to plug it? Where is it and when?
It is Friday the 13th, actually, at a new venue, the Royal British Legion, here in Blackpool. So, it's I've got about, 11 acts so far.
Wow.
That's all I need, really. So it'll be from 7. I will be live streaming it as well. So you can, but I won't be showing the audience because, like I said, it's just the acts.
Fair enough. Okay, well, we'll look forward to that. Do send us a link so we can plug it on our socials and everything as well. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, will do.
So, Gaz, what's next for you? I mean, you say you're looking for another creative musical venture that will take you out on the road. Have you got any leads, or are you just kind of?
I've got a new thing in Berlin that was meant to launch last year, but things happened. So hopefully that could lead into some interesting stuff. Me and Steve have got a whole bunch of things that we're going to be doing together, which I'm looking forward to. Also, Robin Vincent's Synth East event, which is in March, and I'm going to be taking part in that as well. And that sounds like that's going to be that's turning more into an event now, isn't it?
I look forward to that.
So that's looking good. Can't wait to get back out of Berlin for Super Booth. Again, everybody, look, now's the time, everybody. Put it in your diaries now. Everyone makes excuses. Oh, this,
May the 15th, is it? I can't remember now which one.
Let me have a look. It's the
middle of May.
So let's have a look. Super Booth. But, so many people I know go, I couldn't do it because of this, that, or the other. There is nothing more important than Super Booth.
I would agree with that.
Nothing more important than Super Booth. So yes, get it in your diary. Get it in your diaries.
Excellent.
11th, May the 11th. May the 11th.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be there, of course. Anyway, thank you so much for this rather free-form chat. I'm sorry about my technical malfunctions. In my attempt to make things more slick, they actually got less slick, but that's often the way. Version 2.1 will be even better next week. But thank you, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Thanks, Jamie. I'm sure you've got more videos coming up on the YouTube channel. Have you got a show tonight, Gaz, or are you taking the night off? Or?
I've got a session tonight, so no show tonight, I'm afraid. But I do want to bring my shows back. But I am going to be launching a new thing. Oh, that's something I should have plugged earlier. I'm going to be launching a new thing soon as well, like a YouTube-based thing. So I'll keep you posted about that. But I don't want to say too much about it just yet. But it's dead exciting. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Well, that's it for this week. That was Sonic Talk, episode 741, the first of the new year, 2023. We'll see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. See you later. Bye-bye now.